Hey guys, Dale here, starting up a brand new RimWorld series. We are doing Vanilla Factions Expanded as kind of like our cornerstone mod for this series. This is going to be part zero. So, for those of you that aren't familiar, in part zero, I'm just going to kind of like go over some of the key mods, review the world, review some of our objectives for the gameplay for this series. But we'll start actual gameplay in part one. So, if that's not your bag, feel free to jump over to part one and we'll get started with kind of setting up this gameplay. The first thing that I like to do is I always like to hit the graphics setter button and kind of show you guys what mods are adding the most uh, visual content to the game. So here we have textures expanded, lots of vanilla expanded stuff, alpha memes, a bunch of upscale mods. We don't have a crazy long list of like Star Wars or anything like that. I tried my best to like pare down my mods. We went from a little over 300 in the last series to about 200 in this series, so it's still a pretty big mod list. But let's go ahead and we'll load up the game and we'll get that going in the background. We'll take a look at some of these like key mods that I had mentioned. So if we take a look, vanilla tribal vanilla factions expanded tribals. This is gonna change a lot of our gameplay. There's a new start. There's the Wildman start. Some basic research projects. So the way you do initial research in the game has changed, and it's a very hard start. Tech advancing cornerstones and a huge variety of effects, new weapon structures, new apparel. So let's take a look at some of this. We do have a new storyteller, Talon Tribal, and this is actually the storyteller that we're going to use for this playthrough. Whilst being very similar to Cassandra Classic in a way the good and the bad events occur, Talon Tribal additionally shuns technology progress. He will be unhappy if you progress too fast. If less than 4 days pass since the last time you've completed a research project and you complete another, Talon Tribal will send a much stronger rate at you to keep you in line. So we'll have to keep that in mind. So some new starting technology. I don't think there's a way to like hard research this, like set it. I think it's kind of like random. The initial researching before you can put a research bench down requires you to do some activities. I think there's like a ritual. I think there's some other kind of like projects you can do. Um, and basically, it'll lock tech points for these randomly. So you can't really control what you're researching in the beginning until you can unlock the ability to get a research bench down. So you'll have to do things like research fire and agriculture. So like no planting in the beginning. You can harvest, you can go pick berries, but you can't do any planting until agriculture is unlocked, or cultivation, one of these two. Till soiled gizmo. Yeah. So lots of changes to the very beginning of the game. And a little bit harder. So new objects, you have a sitting spot, you have an animal trap, a research spot, a large fire that you can perform some rituals at to help kind of like get you some research points, floor painting, some new weapons, throw spikes and stakes. Chunk, is this a new weapon? Smashing potential, yeah. Different types of tribal wear, so light, heavy, and war tribal wear. Tribal Gathering is the new ritual. So, Tribal Gathering is a new ritual that serves as a way to conduct research in animal and Neolithic tech areas. So, those new research projects that we saw up here, like basically this guy that will provide some research. And then tech advancing. This mod allows you to advance through tech eras via a special ritual, which can be conducted at Gathering Spot. In order to be eligible for the ritual, you need to research all research projects from the current tech era. advancing to the new tech era grants you one cornerstone point. And so cornerstone points are these buffs that you can add to your playthrough permanently for your colonists. And there's a whole huge list of them, but just like a couple of examples: Keepers of the Pastures, yield of animal handling is increased by 15%. Way of the Rested Spirit, need to rest depletes 10% slower. Mortar Visionaries, mortar accuracy is 15% higher. So all kinds of like potential buffs. I think these are permanent. Like once you select it, you can't like go and change it. So something to kind of think about. And then some new quests. Wildmen group. One of your colonists found out about the existence of a small tribe of wildmen near your colony. Wild men most likely mean us harm and are gathering together, hoping that the numbers will help them survive. In this quest, you may venture to the gathering of wild men. If you outnumber them significantly, they will join you. If they outnumber you, they will attack you. If your numbers are more or less equal, they will flee. So it's a way to potentially gather some new colonists in this like pretty brutal start. The next mod that we'll take a look at is Miscellaneous Endgame. So this is just a new endgame for RimWorld. Basically, you have to collect some tech prints, and then you're able to build this little item. And then once you activate this item, you have to defend your base for like 30 days, like kind of wave survivally or just like normal defending the ship when you're starting it up. But that'll be our endgame condition. Basically, like with this item, I think lore-wise in the mod, you're declaring like martial law. You're declaring yourself kind of the supreme ruler of the planet or whatever. And so that will be our objective, is to go from lowly tribals to kind of like the dominant faction on the planet. Okay, next up, we have dynamic flooding. I saw this mod a little while back, and it just really caught my eye. And so I've wanted to play with it. So I wanted water to kind of be like a big feature of this playthrough. So we'll take a look at the map in a moment, and you'll see that water is a big feature in the playthrough. And I'm curious to see how dynamic flooding will work with it. So flooding during rain, it's configurable in the mod settings. Rain creates wet soil, which increases fertility of that soil. It's also a mod setting you can change. So you can pretty much like toggle any of these features on or off with the mod. Rain creates puddles, and there. So flooding, low, medium, high, puddle levels to be added, water dry speed. Looks like in these screenshots, those aren't necessarily available yet. But I haven't checked to see if those are available or not. If we take a look at this graphic, you can kind of see like there's a river here. It must have rained. Like as it's raining, it's filling up and then it recedes. You can block the effects of flooding with walls. So like if you wanted to build in this area and not be impacted by flooding, you might just like put some walls up to see if you can kind of like tame the river and the flooding that's going on. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what that's like. I mentioned this in a post on our community page on YouTube. We aren't playing with Aaron's Corvia mod as our xenotype, but we do have them in the playthrough, and we have set the Savage tribal faction as Corvia. I just really kind of wanted to like see what these new genes were about. I'm not sure if we'll do any genetic engineering in our playthrough, but you know, Aaron always just makes like really visually stunning mods. So like these new pieces, like the feather body, the Corvia face, some wings and ears, they just like look great. The egg mechanic has settings so that you can actually adjust like how long you're gestating the egg for, how long it takes the egg to actually hatch as well. Those are two separate settings. And then the Corvia nest is actually required for these types of eggs to be hatched. Our xenotype isn't going to use that egg setting. It's going to use the egg setting from the Swords mod. I'm a little more familiar with that, and I know how to change kind of like how long it takes for those eggs to hatch. I think we're going to extend it so that our eggs take a bit longer to hatch. But I'm curious to see what this looks like. You know, if we get an opportunity, I would love to grab one of these as a colonist just to see kind of like how this is all working. And then another mod that's like recently caught my attention, the ATH's Style Dresses. There are two versions of this mod. So there's one where you can set this as like an ideological style. So I think you can set up to like 4 or 5 ideological styles. And if this is one of them, then it provides retextures for when a female in the colony is wearing clothing. So instead of just like, the same old royal robe, this is what they get instead. And so the mod that doesn't have it as an ideological setting, it just does it by default. Like your like if there is a female texture for it, for like the duster, for the duster parka, whatever, then it'll always be that if a female is wearing it. But if you don't necessarily like always want that to happen, then you can make it an ideological style, and only ideologians that will have it will show up. So it'd be kind of neat to kind of mix that in and out of some of the ideologies that are happening in your world, for the other factions and stuff. Maybe see one trader show up with a regular duster, and then another trader with a different ideology show up with the female duster. So I'm curious about that. I think it fits into our playthrough as well, since we're going to be progressing through the ages, tribal and industrial, medieval, all that stuff. I think it'll just add a little bit more flavor to the way that our colony looks when we get the opportunity to have an ideologian. Okay, I need to move the cat out of the way so I can switch back from my browser to the game. So here are our starting colonists. I didn't have like a big story or anything planned for this one. So just kind of like messing around with some brand new colonists. And I figured we would grab some of the name recommendations from Discord and from some of the YouTube comments. So we had Khan in our last series. I gave them all pretty much the same first and last name because it would be nice to kind of like persist some of these as family names through the game. So we have Khan. Showed up in Clones versus Droids. Went ahead and reused that name. Fennec, whose first appearance was in Arwen Den, and then also reappeared in not the Deserters, in Shatterpoint. Fordo is a recent recommendation. Cam, also a recent recommendation, and Venric, or better known as Ven, has shown up in quite a few series. I think what was it? Our Rim Effect series. I think Ven's been in almost every series. I know he was in Deserters, but yeah, one of the first recommendations that I've had. So if you guys have any recommendations for colonist names, I think this is a great series for those to be showing up. I have a couple more on my list, so potentially we'll be seeing like Jawbone and some other folks back as well. We don't have an ideology right now. So as Wild Men, a starting faction, you don't get an option to choose your ideology stuff until you've actually progressed your research to be able to do that. So we'll be doing ideology things later in the series once we get to that tech level. And then I think if we are able to, I would like us to do fluid ideology so that we can evolve our ideology over time. This is pretty much what we started with. We started with a stake, we started with a spear, and we started with some wood up here. So taking a look at our map, we are playing on like a very, very large map. But, a big chunk of it is water. So hopefully that will mitigate some of the game performance issues if we do start to experience some slowness or whatnot. I have Performance Optimizer and Rocket Man not loaded in the mod list right now, but we'll load them if we need to. There are I think there are 7 geothermals around the map. I like this little island in the cove. This is from Geological Landforms. I think this island is going to be a predominant feature of our playthrough. From the polls, people wanted egg layers, they wanted scales, they wanted normal body size. So the xenotype we've come up with, I'm calling a Varanid. So just some like aesthetic things: water vomit, horns, Demon ears, demon tail, unsettling appearance. And then obviously a little bit more color variety in the hair, this nice kind of ice blue skin. From a kind of plus and minus perspective, we're cold blooded, so our minimum comfortable temperature and maximum comfortable temperature are reduced basically. We do have elongated fingers, so a little bit more manipulation, dark vision. Other things, slow wound healing but robust digestion. We're psychically deaf, so no psychic powers. We don't have psycasting expanded. Potentially, you know, if we recruit some non-Virinids to the colony, maybe that gets bred out, or maybe those folks might be psychic, but it'll just be vanilla psycasting. They're also super heat tolerant. I figured that would be really important. We'd put them in a warmer climate. It's a temperate climate, but it doesn't get below 0 here. They're robust and they have scale skin, which gives them some sharp armor chance, or additional sharp armor. So that's kind of like what we're looking like. And they are egg layers. When it comes to the factions, we have some industrial factions. We have some like Western styled factions, a couple medieval factions, and then some Vikings. So a variety there, as well as pirates and the Empire and mechanoids and insects. The world is a little bit smaller than normal. And I tried to cluster all the factions together so it looks like they have proper territory and stuff. And we are out here on this little peninsula, kind of like, not quite, I guess the southern hemisphere. So yeah, that is what we are doing. Anyhow, I'm going to be posting this video a little earlier than typical, and part 1 will be out at the usual time later tonight. Thanks for hanging out, as always. Until next time, have a good one. Bye.